Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. All right, we have a lot to do. Thank you so much for everyone being on here. I see Brian's here too and Joanne, nice. So they all got the agenda and Mary got everything as well, right, Greg?
Yes.
All right, let's call the meeting to order at 6:33. And announcements, Greg?
Yeah, this meeting is being video recorded and will be available on our STRPB website with a link to our YouTube channel.
All right. And we have a roll call. Greg
Here.
and Lynn,
Here.
Mike,
Here.
Bill,
Here.
Karen,
Here.
Christy,
Here.
Deb Potay,
Here.
and also with us, and I'm here, Alan, and also with us are Brian Beck, the superintendent, Gil Montague, and the director of business and finance, Joanne Blyer. Welcome. At
I'm
least
here
I see your
also,
name.
Alan.
Oh, Steve, I wrote your name and didn't call you. I'm sorry.
That's all
How
right.
did I get from you to Christy? You guys moving around with me? And Steve is here. All right. So no minutes, correct?
No minutes, yeah.
All right, so that's a placeholder. And so let's go down. Bill, I am excited to hear how things went. I'm sure everyone is pretty interested in seeing how that went. So would you mind taking the lead and share how things went in both districts?
Yeah, we arrived at Pioneer on Tuesday. And all the faculty was present. The principal was not present because he's out on a medical leave. But aside from that, we presented. I presented initially. Then we opened the floor to questions. I had expected to be there for 15 to 30 minutes maybe, and we were there for an hour and a quarter. So they had a lot of questions. Some of it had nothing to do with what we're doing, more their own experiences, current experiences. But other than that, some people were inquisitive about what lay ahead, and some people definitely expressed opinions of doubt about the veracity of the whole project. So, and then on Wednesday, we met with the staff at Turners Falls High School. We presented literally the same message. In retrospect, I realized there are a few things that I left out that I would have liked to have thought of at the time, but that's the way it goes. Another time, another day. In any event, expected again, I didn't expect how long that meeting was or presentation was going to take. And it was much shorter than at Pioneer, but the staff was a little more receptive and appreciative, at least at the end. They applauded when we were done. So they were either happy to stop hearing from us or they were appreciative of us coming to present. The us is, I was there and Karen O'Neill joined also, as did Deb Loomer. And Deb Loomer did take notes, minutes, I guess we will call them. So she has document relating to what transpired, and those will be forthcoming, but they're not available right now. My hands are our bear. And that's about it. And you might ask Karen for her thoughts also, as well as Deb, if she shows up. Anything else?
Karen,
Yeah,
you're on mute. Yeah.
I just changed it. Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yep.
all right. As far as Pioneer, you know that I retired from there, so I knew some of the people, and they expressed things in their questions. Some of it seemed a bit fearful to me, of how things might change. And there was at least one person who had experience in Framingham and said she specifically chose to come to Pioneer because it was a small school. So that issue came up. And people, I know you don't want to begin contrasting now, but several people raised the issue of the grouping differences between Pioneer and Turner's Falls, Great Falls, Turner's Falls. So
Karen,
that-
can you explain what you mean by that?
homogeneous versus heterogeneous grouping. Pioneer has heterogeneous grouping, and Turner's Falls High School has homogeneous grouping. And from the outset, because of my experience there, I thought this might be a hurdle. And I think that we need to get the faculties together sooner rather than later, so they can discover more about what each other is doing and how they see this potentially working or not. And there are questions about that. As far as Turner's Falls, they were much more relaxed, I believe, in the room. And as Bill said, they were grateful that we were working on this. So it was a more positive atmosphere.
Karen, or can I ask, Karen and Bill, you said something about the veracity of,
Yeah. I don't know what
what does that mean? Bill? Like they didn't seem to think it was
Did you
legitimate
mean viability, Bill?
Yes,
viability.
that's a much better word.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
makes more sense.
makes more sense.
Viability, like in terms of being able to combine because of distance and bus transportation, and is that why, do you think?
Say that again.
Do you think it had to do with their concern about viability was around, what was it around? Was it because
Several-
of the distance of the
several
buses, or
issues.
was it because different populations?
All of those things came up. One individual said that if this happened, he would guarantee that he would pull his kid out of the school and go elsewhere.
His
Um,
three kids.
However many.
Yeah.
A couple other people agreed with that kind of thought. Certainly what Karen mentioned about the notion of a small school being a good thing certainly was voiced by more than one party. And nobody talked about finances. I think that in general, one of the impressions I had because of the nature of the questions and the topics being discussed, I don't think that the staff is fully engaged probably at either school in the financial side of the whole stories. And so they're looking at least several people, in my opinion, have a very good idea of what they think quality education is, and they believe in lower numbers and closer contact with the students and teachers, I think is one way. And it, to that end, I would say you have to look at the success of charter schools, for example. The best example, because most of them are quite a bit smaller. They are public schools, but they're smaller than our traditional ones. And yet there are a large group of people that think that is the kind of direction they want to go for their kids' education. But we did not, and all of that aside, one of the things in talking about a small school, nobody really got into the kinds of extracurricular stuff that would have to be, that would probably be lost if you get too small. And again, you can look at the charter schools. They don't have football teams and track teams, things like that. They play ultimate frisbee. They may have a soccer team, but that's about it. Clearly in our public, in our community, things like football happen to be very important and closely coupled with our public education. If your school doesn't have a football team, then there's something truly amiss. And years ago, I suggested that we cancel football at Turner's, and that went nowhere. Pioneer actually did cancel football for quite a long time. And it was only in the last 10 or 15 years maybe that they reinitiated that program, but I'm not sure if it's still going. I don't think it is still going today. They have to partner up with somebody else. Anyway, that's what was happening at Pioneer. At
Can I
Turner's
ask?
Falls.
Oh, can I ask one more question? Did anybody talk about socioeconomic and race at all?
No.
No.
No, that was the only example of that was the individual that said he would pull his kid, and he was and Deb Loomer did ask why, but he didn't give an answer to that. I don't believe.
I know this individual well. It isn't because of diversity. Okay, or lack of diversity. The difference there between the two, it's not that.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds good to me.
Let me open it up for, if you have a question or a thought regarding this, why don't you can just talk. I don't have to recognize you. Give you a chance to jump in.
if I could say one more thing, I think at least at Pioneer, there were a number of people who thought that we had a foregone conclusion that we had reached. Didn't you get that idea, Bill?
Yes, and that was also the last question at Turner's Falls.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
about changing our stance halfway through our presentation, but I
Yeah.
think I corrected that.
Yeah, I think we still have a lot of work to do to reassure the two faculties that is the case, that we are gathering data and collating data and compiling a report. And we may or may not make a recommendation at the end of that. But I think we have a lot of work to do.
All right, I'll jump in for a minute, but, oh, go ahead, Mike. Mike.
Sorry, didn't mean to. Well, I just want to, first of all, say thank you, Bill and Karen and Deb, for doing that. That it sounds very useful. It sounds like an extremely useful exercise to have gone through. And I'm looking forward to seeing Deb's notes on it. I think those will be important because I see it as being important for us as a committee to be collecting all of the reactions that we're getting from various stakeholders, good, bad, and in between, justified, unjustified, whatever, because they give us an idea of what's out there in kind of the public mind about what we're doing. And we're reaching the point where it'll be important for us to answer the real questions that people have about what this process might result in, and also address some of the misperceptions and misconceptions about what we're doing. So I think it's very important that, I think it's great that you had these meetings. Again, thank you. And I think it will be important, though, to have some follow through, working with Deb's notes, to kind of go over what came up at those meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill, a couple other things, if I may. One of the things when we get those questions, by the way, we can also add those to the questions we already had, and put those on the website as well. So that's good that you were able to, someone was taking notes on what questions they have. Couple things. You had mentioned, when you did your presentation, did you talk about we're going to have a facilitator work with in each discipline? And did any ideas flow from that about who should be included or topics that should be talked about or whatever? Can you talk to that from either Karen or Bill or?
No, we did, that was addressed. It wasn't addressed quite as comprehensively as you're laying out. It was addressed to the extent that we did intend to have peer groups, administrative, intermediate, and faculty, as well as parents, potentially, and students. But I was not sure, and I expressed that to both parties as to the extent we were going to be able to do that, how many people could be involved. I don't have the financials on that side of it, so I don't know what your plans are for the peer group pairings. But I did tell people and also told them that we were expecting a stipend for participants to be $50 for an hour and a half. Responses in some instances were, the most pertinent response was, you have to realize we teachers, many of us have had it at the end of the day and just want to go home. So I certainly acknowledge that as well. And, but said that we were still looking for people if they were interested, and that's what they were getting. Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I think I also heard from at least one commenter that it's been such a tough 2 years and they have so much on their plate right now that adding something more would be difficult for a lot of people.
That's a nice way of putting what I said about getting out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I apologize, Bill, right in the middle of when you got to the meat of what some of the staff responded, you cut out and I didn't hear. I guess it switched over to my headphones, which I put in quickly. Can you just go back and you
repeat it?
Well, just the gist of, were they okay with the $50 stipend? And then I lost you.
Oh, nobody complained about that, because I think it also ties in with the facilitator. So I would want to know what her intention is in terms of when she wants these groups to get together before I'm going to say anything about it. So no, I didn't make
Perfect.
any plan, and we didn't have anybody saying, yes, I'll show up. Don't
Okay,
you think that's
thank you.
correct, Karen?
And-
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Mary, thank you for joining us. We're just finishing this up. Bill, you had mentioned that you kind of learned, you had some takeaways about if you were, my words, if you were kind of doing it over or whatever, you kind of thought about some things you maybe do differently or ask or whatever. Can you share that? What did you take away that maybe we should be doing? Because maybe we need to do that as we go forward, why it's fresher in your
Oh,
mind.
no, just my presentations tend to be kind of extemporaneous experiences. So every now and again, I get to the end of the road and I forget which way to turn. So, and that comes to be a stop. But aside from that, just simple things that could have been mentioned that I didn't mention. There's nothing big or small in any of it. I just realized that my presentation was not really as complete as it could have been.
All right, well, thank you for doing that. That's so much appreciated. I see that Jane Dutcher has joined us. I see Michelle has joined us. And Christy, I thought Christy was here before.
It was.
Oh, went away and came back. Oh, is that why my machine is jumping around? Okay, did anyone else come in? And
I
of
don't
course,
think you ever
Mary.
left there, Alan. I think it's just when when people come in, it moves people off to the side. So you probably just got faked out. It's all right though.
It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to fake me out. Okay, well, thank you, Bill and Karen, and we'll extend that as well to Deb. It sounds like to some it was what are we about? This has been kind of in the not that much on the radar screen with them. Did anyone ask, why are we doing this?
I started out by telling them why we're doing it. Because of
And that was,
the Heart Project, which led into the first Abraham and Mars group, and then the second one, which reflected the results of the first one. And then and that now we were working with a facilitator, and I made sure that the facilitator and a consultant were getting confused. I think they serve entirely different needs, but so that clarification was made, and that's about it.
all right, thank you. Thank you so much. Mike, anything on the FTF, or you had done a little bit of work in terms of enrollment, and that got out there, which I very much appreciated. That was a smart move on your part to, kind of nail down how many kids be talking. And I guess you started to play around with potential slides. So thanks
Yeah,
for,
that was kind of in the preparation for this meeting and also the working group. I mean, technically on the FTF side, no, nothing has happened with the subcommittee. I did get October 1st, 21 enrollment numbers and the assessment calculations for FY23 from Gil Montague and Pioneer, and Joanne's here. I'll thank her again for her help on that. And Patricia Kinsella over at Pioneer was also very helpful. And I haven't actually worked up mock-ups of assessments for FY23, but I plan to do so fairly soon, at some point in the next probably week or so, just to kind of have an updated thing. We've got them. The ones I did before were for FY22. they would give people an opportunity to compare what did happen with what might happen in the combined district. And it just occurred to me that since we have at this point enough information for FY23, certainly as much information as the towns are going to have when they go into town meetings, wouldn't be a bad idea to try to do the same exercise for FY23. So having done it for 22, I don't think it'll take very long to update it for 23. As far as preparing slides, our working group, Greg, Steve, and myself were supposed to work on an updated presentation for the public. And it occurred to me that maybe a good place to start will be just have an outline of kind of the basic bones of that presentation. So I put something together, sent it out, heard from Greg that he's been busy, didn't hear from Steve, and so that's where we're at.
All right,
But I
thank
assume
you.
that we will be responding to that. We'll be working on that at some point.
Yeah, thank you. And
Hey,
I
Alan?
just want to take this,
Go ahead.
Yes,
Before we get too
Bill.
far away from what I was doing, I want to mention that some of the major concerns that were expressed at Pioneer anyway were about the school facility itself. Which school would be housing which age group and why was that? So it was very much certainly testimony to them believing that their facility is a good one. And then aside from that, we assured them that school closures were not in our plan in any way. But we did mention that I think both the facilities at Turner's could actually house the whole population if it had to. Whereas it would be a little tighter at Pioneer, but certainly Pioneer has had that many kids, students in the past. So that's all. I just didn't want to get too far away before. Sorry, Michael.
no, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. And just to piggyback, we do have a lot of talent on this, and I am going to, as a side note, recognize Jane, who was looking at enrollment numbers and so forth. And she actually discovered that Pioneer was not using the correct enrollment numbers in doing their assessments to the town. So talk about an eye for detail, but thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome. I don't think it's done yet. But
Does-
my attention has been diverted to other causes, so I haven't reviewed the latest iteration.
Well,
Um,
now my
well-
ears are pricking up. So does that mean the information I've been working with is not correct, Jane?
It's a possibility.
Okay.
I don't know did you get just 23 numbers?
I did a series of scenarios for 22 using the 22 assessment sheet for Pioneer that you sent me.
That's okay.
Okay. And then I've received numbers, the assessment calculation for 23. I got that from Superintendent Kinsella.
I would not guarantee that you have the correct information there.
Okay, maybe I'll contact you at some point then. I don't know what.
The confusion was in counting students, which leads into what the percentage of assessments are.
Would you like me to send you what I have and you can just look at it and get back to me and either say it looks right or it's not right?
Since I haven't looked at the last thing that the superintendent sent out as corrections, it won't do any good for you to send me anything. I'm sorry. I don't know if, I don't mean to bring my personal business into this, but my husband fell went to the hospital and has been transferred to a rehab. And my
Oh,
whole
dear.
life is revolving
Mhm.
around that right now,
Of
and has
course.
been for a week now.
Right.
So don't send me anything because I won't be looking at it. I'll let you
Okay.
know when I've had time to look at what I got latest, and hope I look at it and say, super, I agree now.
Okay,
Well-
I tell you, that sounds great to me. If you could just let me know what you think the right answer is when you can.
Okay.
I'll
Well-
hold off on not doing anything till I hear from you.
If it,
I-
I can send what all the school committee members got from our superintendent about corrections. But I think in that email, she said they were still double checking. So I don't know if that would be any use to you or not. If you think so, I'll send it on to you.
Well, I
I
mean,
think
what's-
that,
what's-
I think it's, is that the whole 5 years corrections?
I believe so.
Because I really question whether we needed to go back and recalculate the whole 5 years. Every
Mhm.
single year we have verified the numbers.
Mhm.
And I think that going back and recreating them probably brought some more errors into the process, and that's what I haven't had time to check.
Okay. But might be best to wait then.
Yeah, from my
Okay.
point of view,
Uh,
I just assume, assuming it's gonna happen. I mean, I just assume wait until somebody has verified the numbers and says, here's the correct numbers. I mean, it's, because as I say, I think I've already got the structure, so I just need to put the right numbers in there. And having some numbers that I don't know whether they're right or not,
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's gonna do me a whole lot of good.
Okay,
So, and I'm happy to wait, at some point, I think we're gonna wanna produce some FY '23, scenarios. So I'll need them before that happens, but I don't need them right away.
right. All right, so I'll let you guys work that out. And thank you, Jane, for, being on top of that. And that will have an impact on Mike's work as he's playing with those. I also want to recognize at 7:02, I'm pleased to see that Deb Loomer has come in. So we have to stop talking about her. Your name came up several times. You're on mute, but your name came up several times, and we were really appreciative. Bill was noting that you were taking notes, and that people are very interested in being able to see that, so they can have a better understanding of the concerns and questions and so forth. So thank you for doing that, Deb.
If you want to get back to it at the end of the meeting, I'll just toss out some of the questions that the people asked, and I can talk and figure out how we're going to get answers to them.
Yeah, and we had said that Deb will add those to, probably add those to the website as we go through other questions that were asked along the way, and we can include those as well.
Okay.
So, all right. I see that Mary is here. I don't think anyone else has come in. So, Mary, welcome, and thank you for joining us a little bit before your allotted time. I guess that's a good thing. You had a little break from your previous engagement. So at our last meeting, we were talking about, the logistics of how we would structure things and have different working groups to work with you to try to get a lot accomplished in, what is not a lot of time, April, May, and June. And we're already into April. So, and I was glad to see Deb Loomer join, because I think she was thinking, she had brought up a lot of different ideas on how we need to, I don't know if I want to use market, but get information out to folks and venues that we haven't used before, like stores and things like that, where the general public is and doesn't, read the papers. So I don't know, not quite sure how to proceed with this other than identify like a point person, and the working groups I had asked previously if some people had an interest or could volunteer for some of these working group meetings. It's much easier to coordinate 2-3 people, possibly 4 to just get together and work through some of the logistics and the activities. And so just recapping, I think we said, remind me, because I haven't been able to look at the minutes. I think, Deb, you were going to be the lead on the PR, I guess we were calling it, in terms of getting the word out. And we had some people that were working with you. That was going to be who?
I believe it was Michelle, Jen, and Deb Potee.
Okay. And since I put the word out, was there anyone else that maybe one other person to help out with those ideas and logistics? All right. And then we had the we had the PowerPoint, working on PowerPoint. Did we have any volunteers for that or a lead person? Mike, it sounded like you were becoming the lead person. No, we did actually. It was going to be Greg, Mike, and Steve, right?
Right. Yes.
So yeah.
And
Okay.
I
And
kind
then
of took the lead on that.
okay, so you've got the lead on
Happy
that.
to share
And
it
then
with
we
anyone
said-
who wants to speak up.
Well, everyone could lead. Could we have another person that could volunteer for that? I won't. Then we talked about questions and the who would be in that working group. And it was going to be Greg and I were 2. And did someone else volunteer? Christy, I don't remember which one you were going to hop on.
I was in Deb's group.
Oh.
If I remember correctly.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Someone younger than
Okay.
me.
Alan, I think,
All right,
as I
so
remember,
Deb-
you volunteered Jennifer for the questions,
Okay.
even
And
though she's
Jennifer- okay.
not technically on the committee.
Right. And you, okay. So there was Greg and I and Jennifer were doing the questions. And I'm doing this, Mary, so you have an idea of, we'll get this all down for you, but so you can have an idea of,
Bring it too.
Is there really no one else interested in helping answer the questions?
Is this for the
Well-
survey?
no, the survey is different. These were for the website, the questions and answers that came up that people had. And now that we're uncovered with Bill, talking with them. So those will be on the website. Sorry, Karen, I see your hand now. So those will be on the website, where the next one was the survey. And probably, that wouldn't go out until like the middle of June or something. We can talk about a timeline, but we needed people to, Mary would obviously be taking probably a big lead in this one. What do we learn? What do we want to know? And maybe what came out of some of the activities that she's involved in. But we need probably some people to brainstorm together as information comes up. So anybody willing to work with Mary on that?
I will do that.
Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Mhm.
As if you
I can
needed
do it
another
too.
committee.
Well, when you
All
said
right.
the bulk of it might be in June, and I perked my ears up, but
Okay.
April's pretty
Okay,
busy.
thank you. Yeah. So that's Karen, Bill, and Mary, of course, so she'll be on all of it. And I can participate to throw in my 2 cents. And Michelle, are you in any of these? Because yours is going to be winding down all the committees you're on.
Me.
Pardon?
She's with
I'm
me.
on Deb's. Deb
Yeah.
Bloom is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know why I was thinking Michelle somebody else. All right, perfect. All
about-
right, so why don't we back up then? Oh, yeah,
Alan, can I just, and I apologize for my lateness. I just want to toss something out as the person who's trying to disseminate information. I'd like to give you a comment that was made by someone up at Pioneer, just so you have a feeling. And what they said was, if you give too much information out into the public, maybe they'll pull their kids out prematurely if they think we're going to combine. And then we will have a self-fulfilling prophecy of a downward spiral of attendance of. So I toss that out in terms of, from my committee's point of view. I disagreed wholeheartedly, but I thought, just in terms of tossing that out when it comes to what you want us to do, would that affect anybody's thought process?
that's
Well-
an interesting point. I think it would maybe guide the information that you do put out, that is, that it's clear that, our task is to research this and the viability of it and so forth. And so we try to continue to hammer that home so people maybe will move off of it. It's a foregone conclusion, I think, Karen, or somebody said.
Yeah.
And so let's just make sure that no matter what we're clear on that disclaimer, that eventually we will make a recommendation that we think the towns might want to pursue it, should not pursue it. But I think everybody has an open mind, and we have so much more to learn before we can even think about entertaining what recommendation we might make. Karen?
I think, to put a finer point on it, it has been in one of our press releases that the consultants had already recommended one school for the high school and another for the middle school. So that fostered the impression that we were really moving on this. And so I think we have to be careful about putting too much suggestion in there that decisions have already been made.
Jane?
I can't find my little hand here to pop up for you, so you'll have to put up with me. I could probably serve on that June group. Hopefully my life will be back to normal before then.
Yeah.
But I hesitate to volunteer for anything at the moment. Maybe that one.
Understood. Well, Jane, having worked with you on fine tuning things with your word choices, that would be great. And putting a survey, making that really clear. So thank you.
Are you referring to some other meeting we were in?
Yeah, like the one just I got out of with you.
Jeez.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so let's go to Mary.
Can I just-
So
can I
welcome
say something?
aboard.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just wanted to follow up on the topic of being careful what we put out, because I do think that that's an important thing to pay attention to. And I said this last week, but I'll say it again. I think another thing to be careful about is how we talk about the existing districts and the challenges facing them. That giving the impression that the existing districts can't be successful as they are might also tend to drive people away. Particularly people who don't think that combining them is the way to go, but also people who say, oh, gee, if these districts are going down the tubes, I need to find something else. So I do think it's a very fine line, because on the one hand, we're doing this because we'd like to make things better, the assumption being they aren't already as good as they can possibly be. But we don't want people to, be looking at what we're doing and saying, whoa, there's problems over there. I think I'll head in another direction.
Yeah, that's a good point. The districts are, both districts are doing amazing things. And so, combining them, maybe that just gets elevated, even more, possibly. So we'll have to be careful on the wording and the presentation of this. I think it can drive the fear. Deb?
And then Bill, I'll be honest with you, the choice of words, that delicate line that you have to walk, no matter how closely you walk that line, people with preconceived notions will take offense to no matter what you say.
They'll correct you too.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I've had that.
All right. So Mary, welcome. I thought one of the first things here was this joint content meeting. One of the things one of the challenges or one of the things we need to figure out, and I think Deb mentioned this before at the last meeting, is, kind of having a master calendar. We have working groups working together. They're going to have some specific activities to do, and then, develop timelines to get them done. We know the end timeline is June 30th. And then, reports and things start to get put together. But do you want to jump in terms of what you see as realistic timelines for these different working groups? You're starting with a joint content meeting of some of the staff getting together in each of the content areas of the schools, and what that might look like.
Well, and we know that June is a crazy month in any school. So I think probably, mid-May and mid-April to the end of May. I'm not sure when spring break is either. But obviously we want to do the data collection on the early end of our time.
Spring break is next week, right?
Is it next week? Is it
No,
for the
2
whole-
weeks.
It's in
2 weeks.
No, 2 weeks.
The
So
18th.
it's the week of the 18th, week of the 18th.
So maybe what we can do with the meetings with staff are front load those to gather as much thinking as possible. We'll get them booked next week for when they return from vacation, right? Does that make sense? I actually am inclined to have conversations ahead of the meetings with the teachers to talk with the leadership. And I'd love your feedback. First of all, let me stop and say, thank you for inviting me back to do this work with you. I am excited about it. A little daunted by how much needs to happen in what seems like a short period of time once again, but I'm thrilled to be working with all of you. So, I mean, my inclination would be to talk with the leaders in the district, and I mean the superintendents in both districts. I see Brian is on the call. I think that they have very valuable insights to share. Tap their wisdom, talk with them about what they see as the potential ideal solution that might come out of this. And whether there are any things that they could do now. And that was a question that came up. Are there things that we could be doing now that you could be doing now that would demonstrate the ability to collaborate and move you in the right direction? And get their sense of what the pros and cons might be of moving forward. And then have the conversations with staff. We could get it all set up early, and Alan seemed to suggest that having the meetings by content area, right, Alan? That with the individuals by content area. I do think all of that precedes going out to the community with anything, because if there is anything we heard through the survey and all the information gathering, it was, we need to know that our kids are going to be going toward something better. If we're going to subject them to the potential confusion or growing pains of merging, then we need to know that what comes out of that is something that's going to enhance kids' experience. So as Alan has said, just being able to really paint the picture of what that looks like will be really critical before you make any decision, right? Are you with me, people? Does this sound reasonable to you? I do think that what we have, I mean, what I heard is that people really want to make sure that this decision is made with kids at the heart of the decision, that what's better for the kids in the district is what, or in the communities is what you want to do. Because we know it's not for financial reasons, right? That is about enhancing the experience. So my recommendation would be just to start with the leadership, just start with the conversations there, gain their thinking, gain their sense of what would be the most, and maybe get a little buy-in from them on it. Brian, I'd love your perspective on this too. To then use that in meetings with the teachers as well. I want teachers to imagine the ideal of what could come out of a merger and get them talking about how you make sure that whatever exists is a great magnet for your communities. I'm not.
Alan?
Do you have suggestions as to how you're going to introduce that, or how many engagements would be needed in order to get a true sense of that? Because initially we're talking about an hour and a half, a one-time shot, but really to satisfy what you need, you might need more than a one-time engagement.
Yeah, let me just clarify that so that I'm remembering. I think we planned on, and so we could modify this, but I think we planned on 4, and Joanne, you might, you did the math. We sort of figured this out. I thought we had 8 groups. We were doing, thinking that there would be 4 in each group, maybe, and that so that it was a one-shot deal. We were thinking curriculum coordinators and teachers from each district, coordinators from each district. I learned that Pioneer doesn't have one, so it would probably be, well, the principal did a lot of the scheduling stuff, so we'll have to figure that out. But Joanne, does that sound right?
Went to the bathroom.
Hi, no, I'm right
Not a
here.
problem.
Sorry.
Did you hear my question? Yeah.
I need to pull up the proposal and I can do some counting and I'll come right back.
Yeah, okay. So we'll leave that for now and we'll continue on. But I think if we could glean from the curriculum coordinators from each discipline, and because that would make 8 meetings times 4, 32 somehow sticks in my head, that we could maybe get what would be possible or what the staff would want for electives, what they could do in the scheduling for electives and for the content courses. And that could free up 2 meetings that, but we wouldn't be able to pay everyone a stipend. But these conversation meetings, if we're able to get, the staffs to participate. So we might have flexibility there. So I'm sorry, Bill, I didn't share that with you when you were going in, because that would have been, helpful when someone, asked that question. So that's something that I'm remiss on.
It didn't impact.
Mary? Okay. Brian's hand is up and we had called on him, or he was asked the question from Mary. Brian?
Yeah, just in listening to the conversation reflecting on my comments in the last meeting, I talked about, that's not my dog.
Honey, here.
That's Alan's dog.
So, yeah, she opened the door to tell me what she was doing. I'm like, the dog goes crazy. Like, I want to be in here. Okay, I apologize. Brian, I missed the last thing you said.
No, it just reflecting on the comments that I made last time, and also hearing, Mary's reflections and the comments of those people who went to the various schools, and then the reflection on that. It occurs to me, like, this group's doing a really good job of identifying obstacles, and the idea of talking to curriculum chairs and so forth will help. Also identify logistics and further identify obstacles. But if I go back to the idea of the community in a vision rather than this group in a vision, I wonder if it would be worthwhile to craft something where we ask the community, we create a presentation of the assets that we have in this community. The various rural opportunities that exist out in the Pioneer District in those 4 towns, the arts and linguistic opportunities that we have here in Turner's Falls, and present those assets to groups of people in the community and say, here, we can build a school with this many of these things, enrollment that would feed these kinds of programs. Our 2 facilities are amazing, so middle school students in either of these places would have amazing opportunities. How would you shape it? And present that to the community and establish a community vision of what this might look like. Not as a commitment, but just this is what the community came up with, because then even people who are ardently against it may throw something in, because you're not asking them whether or not we should do it or we shouldn't. It's just, if we did, what would that look like to you? And then we present that vision back to them at some point in the process. So, that's what I was thinking, and sort of dividing it out into, the considerations of time and where people are enrolled. That, in particular, 9 through 12 students and their families provided a picture of the existing circumstances and perhaps the opportunities that they wish they had. But they're not going to be impacted by this unless they have younger siblings in the district, right? Or in this, proposed district. It's really the pre-K through 8 people who are the ones who are going to have the greatest stake in this. And so those are just my thoughts overall, and jotting down some quick notes and just kind of sharing that as, an idea of maybe where we go. Because one of the things that we have talked about is assets. What do we have in our communities to offer? And what if we threw all those assets together, including these amazing facilities and the people who exist on each of these amazing faculties and staffs? Thanks.
And Brian, just to be clear, and those assets include the staff, and you talked about the related arts, linguistic, and different things. But so that includes what we could offer collectively, with the teachers gleaning out what we could do with our present staff. Are you thinking? Is that how you're thinking?
Yeah, and I think that in terms of a stakeholder group providing input, those are certainly people who are impacted by the current circumstances as well as moving forward. I don't see the differentiation in heterogeneity as being heterogeneity versus homogeneity being an issue. What we should be doing is putting everybody on the track to take AP Calculus by the time they're a senior. And if not everybody is going to be able to do that, great, then they fall back to particular levels. But having, those are the types of things that different being able to talk about opportunities that exist there, people will be able to have an influence on the conversation around the obstacles. And that's one of the things
Okay.
that was presented as an obstacle. So,
Okay. And I'm going to move to Deb, but just to comment, Pioneer spent a lot of years, moving in the direction of heterogeneous grouping. And I would just throw out there, maybe through the conversation with staff, maybe you could have both. Maybe it doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe there is a common ground, or opportunities for kids to be engaged in the either or, and that'd be one of the assets of having multiple options for kids and for parents. So I'll leave it at that. But I do want to. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, because I was on the Pioneer School Committee when Everett Masters was there and detracking the school and a lot of the research and stuff they went into. So people that have been there have been very committed to this model. So it's something that will have to be talked through, and something that Mary might be able to, get a better understanding of in her work. So let me go to Deb Loomer, and I'm going to go back to you, Mary. Thank you, Brian. Those are great comments. I appreciate it. And Joanne, we'll come back to you in a bit as you're crunching numbers. Go ahead, Deb.
Probably three things now. Number one of the things for me as you meet with these groups is, I believe the philosophy of a middle school is different than the philosophy of a high school. So having high school and middle school teachers, there's just too much to be discussed. I would think that you would have high school teachers talking with high school teachers to start, and middle school teachers talking about middle school programs to start. And that would certainly be more productive. The second thing is, oh no, Pioneer is totally committed to heterogeneous. And that was very clear in our meetings that we had with them, that is a primary concern, is that Gil Montague has more homogeneous groups than Pioneer does. And that is definitely a huge, I would say huge concern. The third thing was Brian mentioned about going out to the community. One of the things that I learned up at Pioneer is people don't know enough to make a decision about what they see as a program. People don't know that Turner's Falls has a fitness center and a dance room and a theater that, can accommodate yada, yada. So I think sometimes unless you have that information, you don't have the vision. And maybe that's something that we talk about is literally the facilities of what could happen with programs. And I think that might be a place to start, because I don't think very many people, even community members in Turner's Falls who don't have children, I don't think they understand how gorgeous the building really is. And up at Pioneer with the woods area and so forth, maybe people just don't understand how great of an asset that is. So I just tossed those three things out.
Yeah, and I'll come back to, I'll come back. I want to get down to Mary. I do want to say that when I heard Brian's comments, I heard that as part of the education part. Maybe in terms of it's the order, before we ask people for the vision, we need to get out the remarkable facilities we have, the swimming pool. There's just a lot of things that you're probably right, people don't know, and that has to be put out there of what we could do because of the resources we have. And then once they see all that, then I think they're in a position to create a vision. But you need something. You can't have a blank piece of paper. And I think that's what Brian was trying to put out there is let's let people know all the assets that we do have. Mike, is that going to be fairly quick so I can get back to Mary?
Sure. I just wanted to follow up on something Deb just said about middle school philosophies being different from high school philosophies. I've been struck reading in articles recently about drama programs, productions at both Gilmonte and Pioneer. And I believe in each one. They made a point that students from the middle school were involved along with students from the high school, and that all the kids found that to be the involvement of both of those groups to be very enriching. And in particularly the middle school students were kind of blown away by the fact that they were there with the high school kids and learning so much. And I don't know how to work that in, but because it sort of goes against what we're talking about, which is separating the two schools. But one advantage that we have now with the middle schools and high schools being in basically the same place in each district is that you can do that. And I just hope we can somehow figure out how to not lose sight of the fact that that does seem to be something that is helpful in some circumstances in the current situation. I know it's not the only factor, but it's.
Okay, and Greg, let me just say, you may have to jump in because my internet connection is getting very shaky. Is Joanne still here? Because I don't, Joanne, do you have that information just so that Mary knows what we have to work with?
Yes. So we
Thank you.
we're looking for the amount of money for stipends, right? So the number of hours?
Yes.
Okay, so we assume 20 people, so average of 10 from each district for 11 hours. And then the rate of pay for those stipends we had is $30 an hour for a budget of 6,600.
Okay, so I don't know where what I was thinking in terms of they probably meet 4 times. Was that part of this? You said 20 hours.
It's
oh yeah, an hour and a half
people.
meeting. Yeah.
20
okay.
people, 11 hours.
Oh.
11 hours per person?
Yes.
Oh,
So you
okay.
can have multiple meetings.
All right. Mary, we're back.
That's how we did the math, and that isn't how we have to do it. That $6,600 could be spent any way we decide to spend it, but we had to write something into the grant, and so that's what we put in there.
Ellen, I think Greg had a question or a comment.
Okay, thank you. Because why don't you lead now? Because you can look and you're talking and you know who the players are. So
okay,
because
great.
I see Deb's hand. Deb, you might want to put your hand on unless it's back up again. Just to let you know it's still up. So Greg is somewhere. There he is.
I'm in the dark. It's like I'm dark or something. I can't. A witness protection program here. No, I just a quick comment to Mike. Mike, those kind of scenarios work well in very limited ways, where you have middle school and high school, and they have to be very tightly controlled, because you have when you start talking about combining and having activities with middle school and high school, because the school I teach at is 7 through 12. And we do very much limit the amount of contact, because you're talking sometimes 12-year-olds with 18-year-olds, and that can be very, very tricky, because there's just huge development gaps there. So you have to be, they do work for certain things and in sort of tightly controlled sort of ways, but things like sports, you don't really want your 12-year-olds out there with the 18-year-olds. So I'm just making that point. It tends to, there can be a whole lot of cons to it if it's not done, in a very sort of constrict way and tightly controlled. The other thing is, I like Brian's idea. I think you guys sort of outlined a process, which would be to, hit up the teachers first. And it sounds like from what Bill was saying that they probably need a little more information in terms of how the finances work with the programmatic piece. I think they're probably very much well versed in the programmatic piece, but how the finances, are limited in terms of the program, meaning that it's student driven, meaning that you have a price, the revenue comes per student. And so when you don't have enough students, or you're running the risk of enrollment dropping, you run into hold harmless, you run into rising costs per student costs. And so I'm not sure how much they're informed on that part of it. And then once you sort of get them up to speed and put the two sort of departments together at the high school level, and I agree with with Deb that I think you really do want to work with high school only and middle school only, because they are different philosophies often, just because of very different developmental ages. And talk about just what Brian's talking about. What are the assets both within their programs and both within the facilities? The faculty will know a lot of this stuff. So they'll be able to piece together what the assets are in their respective districts, and then how the two might combine and amplify each other. So, and then I think, to Brian's point, once you have all that and you bring that to the community, then you can ask them, once they're somewhat informed by what comes out of the districts, to have that conversation about what do they think it would look like. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I got a thumbs up. I guess I made.
Deb, is your hand still up, or can I? No, thank you. Deb Loomer, is your hand still up, or can I go to Mary? Are you?
But
Thank
the
you.
only thought I
Did you
had,
want to say something?
I was going to say, the only thought I had when Joanne said there was 20 people involved, I want to make sure that I'll call them specials for lack of any word, because a lot of the things that are affected most by low enrollments are the arts, the music, the languages, the physical education. So I think it's real important to also get their thoughts, because that's where the computer, the CAD programming, that sort of stuff. So Mary, I'm sure you probably thought of that, but when I heard only 20 people, for me, and I know it was for the grant, Joanne, so it's okay, but that's when I went, oh, but it's a lot of that other stuff.
I wouldn't have let them do it without the arts. I mean, you have to do it with it, because otherwise, they're the ones. As an arts teacher, I can tell you, I know scheduling better than any of the other departments, because anytime a requirement's added, I know it's going to affect the electives.
Yeah.
And we know it. And so we know the scheduling better than anyone, because when you have a required English teacher, all they know is the schedule changed. They're like, they've got 4 years of required classes. Doesn't really affect them. They don't really give much thought to the schedule. So you got to hit up your elective teachers. Have to.
Yeah. Yeah. So we put in for when Joe and I were putting this together in terms of the pieces, the related arts was a big one. Special education was another.
Right.
The sports in terms of the athletic directors. So, and then we had the content areas, and I'm probably missing some, Joanne, but we tried to hit every aspect of a district.
Right. So what I looked at is the department heads that we have at Gil Montague. So we have an English department head for 6 through 12, math, social studies, science, related arts is a separate one. So that would include all of the related arts and PE and music, Spanish, all of those. And then we also have a special ed department head.
Yeah.
And then I think we talked about athletic directors, and we had a couple holes to put extra people in. So
You've got a lot of that already figured out. Karen?
Yes, this might be a little bit late. I've been trying to say this before. When Deb and I left Turner's Falls High School, I had remarked to her that I hadn't been there in many years. I'd been there for a couple of workshops and co-presentations that another biology teacher and I did with each other way back when. But I thought it would be very helpful for people to see both facilities and know what they have to give as far as structure, what's in them. And I felt at the end of the day that this wasn't such a foreign place because I'd been back there. So I think I was very happy to hear there would be more than one meeting for each group, and perhaps they could alternate where they met, one school versus the other. That's all.
That assumes it's not
You
biased.
you have the lead.
So tell me, first of all, what you want the outcome, what in your words, what you want the outcome of these meetings to generate. Greg?
I think the goal is to get to the heart of what's possible. As Mike put it in some of our past meetings, we don't know concretely what is possible until we start to have conversations with the faculty to say, you know, what is running in your departments? What do you wish was running if you had, you know, more students, and what could be possible? Once you know from their perspective what is possible, then you talk with coaches. You know, maybe you can now have a JV team, you know, those kind of things, that you begin to put together a list of things that are possible. And then you go out to your community, as Brian said, and you say, here are some of the things that we have discussed and have come out of these discussions with the faculty about what could be possible. As you'll know, parents, they're not teachers. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. They have no idea what's possible. They have no idea how a schedule works. They have no idea, what a school's even missing at times and what's potential. So it's hard to say, to a community, do you want to vote for something like this if they have no idea what the potential is? So in the end, you're trying to give them concrete answers as to what, maybe not, obviously it's not going to be, you're going to get this, you're going to get that. It's just like, these are potentials, and they're good potentials.
Okay, anything else that you see as the outcome that you'd like from this? Karen?
I would like
Yeah.
as an outcome, well, go ahead, Karen.
Okay. I think there needs to be a better understanding of why we're doing it. I've already said that, but I need to say it again. There's a lot of misunderstanding there, and they need to understand the motivation and the process. And then it's very important to know what's possible after that.
They meaning the family? Whom do you mean when you say they
I
need?
Start with your groups, your stakeholder groups, but the content area people. Why are we doing this? Where did it come from? And why we are asking them for input.
Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, well, I'll respond to that because she tripped my thinking some more, but so we're asking the professionals, we're asking the people within the schools because they know what they would like to offer, but they can't, or they can only offer like one section, and it competes with, an elective that a kid wanted to take. But that's just the way, the way things landed. So one of the things that as I went to these forums, people ask the question, well, what would it look like? Or what would you have? And we didn't have answers to that. we only had the Mars report that, came up with, maybe someone said, oh, you could do Latin. And I think I saw that in the report. Well, I don't know, I think that they were coming up with ideas from their experience as superintendents and so forth when they were, writing this report, and they were filling in the gaps. I'm hoping what comes out of this is we will actually be able to fill in some of the gaps with, I don't want to say it was hypothetical what they were doing, but, with concrete examples of things that we can do. The other thing I'd like to come out of this is in this community engagement. I think a big part of this is education, and the education piece is going to be one of the aspects. Is what are the opportunities for kids in a variety of areas in a school setting, and being able to then, I don't know if we can do it this round, but get a reaction from the community once we've given them, real information, or not hypothetical. So
Okay.
I'm hoping community engagement helps to educate people to want to become more involved and learning more about what we're doing.
Okay, now I see a lot of hands, and you're talking about big picture of all of this, not specifically the meetings with the staff. Alan, right? I saw Deb first.
No, I'm speaking the meeting with the staff. You would be able to get.
Okay. But the reaction from the community would be the survey down the road. Excuse me, right? But we can figure that out.
Yes.
Deb, and then Stephen, and then Mike.
Mary, I just wanted to kind of give you an insight into one of the meetings we had with the schools. And the comment, and it would be all quoting who came to the meetings, and one was, who's to say that offering more courses is better than just keeping small classes and having a better environment? So once again, for you to know that there are some people that really do think that more courses does not make for, and that was expressed.
Yeah.
So that's just something I wanted you to be aware of.
Not different from other things I've heard. So thank you. Great. And Stephen?
I was thinking about it in terms of in approaching the different stakeholders in the schools, faculty and whatnot. It's like, first question is, what do you do well? And I'd like to hear the sharing of that from each school, so they can talk to each other about what they do well. And then the follow-up question to that is, what would they like to do better? Or what could they see as improvement upon what they're doing well, and how they might see that, with the intent, hopefully in the long run, for teachers to get excited about the possibilities of what they can do, and then possibly going back and talking to their cohorts and say, well, these are some of the things that we're thinking about that might be possible to do. And I think in that way generate more interest and maybe break down some of the obstacles that are coming up at this point. So.
Thank you. Yeah, Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'll echo a lot of what's been said with maybe a slightly different slant. I'm speaking specifically about meeting with the teachers in the content areas to talk about what they might be able to do. And the way I see that is right now, there are a certain number of teachers in each content area who offer a certain number of classes, and they have a certain number of students. And if they were to get together and say, okay, we've got this many teachers with these specialties and these talents, and we've got these students, how might we want things to be different if we were all working together in one system as opposed to working separately in two systems? And I mean, one answer might be, well, we'd make bigger classes and offer more different classes. Another answer, as Deb suggested, some people might say, well, we like the small classes, but maybe there might be other changes we'd want to make. Following up on one thing that Greg mentioned, I'm not sure that in these meetings it'd be that necessary to get into the finances of how the Chapter 70 formula works, just because I think the assumption should be that the money wouldn't change in that scenario. Right now, the teachers are there, they're being paid, the students are there. None of that should, they should all be assumed to be just as they are. And so the question then is, if you just had all these teachers working in one system and all these students in one system, how might you make things different? Are the assumption being better than things are now, if that's clear.
It is. Thank you, Mike. And Deb, did you want to weigh in on this again? I see the hand. No. Oh, okay. Thanks. So what I'm hearing is, let's imagine what it could be if we were to join forces. I guess the question is there ever a time to think about, do we ever think about a magnet concept? Why are people on to this school? Is that necessary?
Could you repeat that? Alan's thing cut in.
I guess I wonder if we could get people kind of rising out of self-interest toward this collective purpose. And I think some of these questions would get you there. But how do we ignite a passion to create this new school? And it might be, or these two new schools. I guess I don't want it to, I would caution against being too much what is and want it to be aspirational in what comes out. Does that make sense to people?
It makes sense to me. And that is the way that we presented stuff. We both meetings with faculty started out with, well, it actually started out with me saying I was so happy because I finished my taxes. Aside from that, we told them what we had not done. We hadn't come to any conclusions and we hadn't made any commitments to anything. But also, we did talk about the fact that we were not contrasting. This was not an effort to contrast or compare one district to the other, which leads you open to, and then I also made the point that if this goes forward and it gets concluded, then there won't be any more working for Pioneer or working for Gil Montague. You'll be working for a whole new entity. But I made the point also that the major impact of this in terms of savings would be at the administrative level, not at the faculty level. So we were talking, and then we were also talking about bringing up population and student enrollment numbers. It seems to me that the people at Pioneer seem to be more engaged in what they're currently doing, but certainly removed from how they're able to do it. In other words, I tried to point, we're not dealing with finances here, we're dealing with an educational process and opportunity, but ultimately it still gets back to finances, and the staff needs to be, in my opinion only, I think the staff needs to be aware of that and start looking at that when they're also thinking about their job situation. Is that good, Deb?
Yeah, I got a question for you though, Mary. When you said have them be more aspirational, there's no doubt that there's a lot of pride in what they're doing now. And if I don't know, if I'm from Gil Montague and I don't know what Pioneer is doing, then I can't be aspirational because I don't know what resources they have. So I think by giving people an opportunity, I think Greg said, of what they do well,
Yeah.
that's their pride. They get to express it. And I think there's a feeling of they want to express that. And if you suppress that, I think it's going to be not as aspirational in the end.
Right. Okay. Yes, Greg.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I think that's a good point, Deb. That's the assets part that Brian was talking about. Come up with what you do well. But one thing that's really important, and Brian, I tried to find out. Are you still there? Is there a minimum number of students required to run a class?
No, I mean, that's really dependent on resources, and a new district with combined resources would be able to put something like that together. I mean, that's another opportunity when you're looking at small schools. There's no hard and fast threshold for shutting a class down that I'm aware of. And that probably has to do with the fact that schools have more resources extended to them by ESSER funding right now and trying to keep things going. So for example, we have one student in advanced placement calculus, and we don't see that as a substantial inefficiency at this time. The student was able to do it. The teacher was able to teach it and that student actually provides other opportunities in assisting other students. So, but we probably couldn't have done that in a leaner year. That student probably would have had to take that course on VHS or some similar remote opportunity that the district would have had to pay for.
Right. And then, in a sort of typical situation where, let's say, I'm taking Pioneer as they're in hold harmless. I don't know if they, often there is sort of a rule of thumb, if you've got below 3 or 4 or 5, then you look to put those students elsewhere when you start scheduling. In the past, do you have any sort of idea what that would be? I mean, often, we in our school, we'd often wouldn't run a class if you got 2, even though we're small. It just, 2 is.
No, I that's why I was kind of explaining the context. I don't have a great idea of, what that standard would have looked like and its application.
Yeah. And it's fine. I mean, I only bring it up because I know, as someone that teaches in a small school, that, when I'm teaching a class of 4, I know parents think that small classes are, wonderful and all, and you get all this individual attention, but you don't get the same kind of class than when you have 12.
Yeah.
And 12,
right.
12 to 20 is by far a better class, because you just have more voices in the room. You have more, often you have more engagement. If there's only 3 students, it's very easy for them to just start to check out, even though you think you've got the personal, connection there. And I'm just speaking from many years of experience. So I prefer a class above, 12 than a class of 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understood.
Thanks. Karen?
Yes, I can talk about some of the alternatives to not running a class that only a few students would sign up for, that were done at Pioneer while I was there. We had independent study, and it was up to a student to prepare a proposal, present it to a faculty member to see if they were interested in finding time to help them with this. And then if there was agreement on mutual times that you could meet, then it went to the principal to okay. And I did it. With 2 students who wanted to do marine biology. We did not have such a thing. We met at lunchtimes. We met on Friday afternoons after school. And hey, they both went into marine biology after graduating from college. So it can work. Additionally, you can double up some, we have doubled up some advanced foreign languages at the same time, like Spanish 3 and 4 taught during the same block with the same teacher. That's a load on the teacher, but they've been willing to do that. And that's how we have dealt with that problem. So there are other options.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, and I'd only chime in that, independent studies are, I've done a lot of those too, but they often are a different thing. I mean, it's often, a class that would probably never run. I was more like talking about when you have the option of running a class that's sort of a staple class and you can't run it, you just don't have the critical mass of students.
So, thank you. I think you've given me some great guidance on what you'd like the outcome to be. And I hear it both as helping us generate both the dream of what could be if we merged and the potential obstacles that would need to be overcome to get there, but also hopefully a sense that they're part of this decision and that they could then be champions for it down the road. Is that an outcome that you'd like to see as well from this process? That they feel like not that it's absolutely going to happen, but that should it happen, they would understand the benefit.
Yeah.
Well, Mary, can I just say that I want to be careful. I agree with what you said, based on the assumption that if it does happen, it's because there has been a process that has gotten buy-in from a lot of different people.
Right.
The teachers being one group. And I mean, being sensitive to, I don't know if you were here when people were talking about the meetings that they had with the faculties, where there was a perception that the decision had already been made. And that, Bill said he had to try to dispel that.
Right.
I want to be very careful that we don't come across as, we think there's a lot of potential here and we want you to help us sell the idea and figure out how to make it work, because I don't see that as being where I'm coming from. And I think that does play into the assumption that we've already made the decision. So if we haven't made the decision, then what we're really saying is whichever decision we make, most people will agree that it's probably best that that's the way to go, whether it's a merger or whether it's not a merger.
I didn't mean it to sound like it would be almost proselytizing about a decision, but much more that when you engage people in the thinking, that they come away potentially more supportive of whatever decision you make, right? So thank you for that. I didn't hear a lot of enthusiasm about the idea
Mary,
that
Mary?
Yes.
Mary?
Alan, yes.
Just one quick comment, if you can hear me. So I agree with everything you said, with the exception of, I'm not looking right now because I don't know what it is we'd be championing. So I'm not looking for the buy-in to the point that, they become champions of this cause, because I see this as right now, we're still getting information. They're learning what's possible. We're learning what's possible. Maybe down the road, if our recommendation is leaning in this direction, then, I would hope that, their buy-in was there. But I think we need to be careful about misleading them that, we wouldn't be doing it intentionally, but I agree with Mike. We need to be careful about, we're not asking them to champion anything right now. We're asking them to help us learn more about both districts and what a district could look like. That's all. Thank you.
Right. And it's engaging their thinking so that I do think you have a lot of people out there who don't know much about this at all. And the idea is that the more you have the conversations, the more people are engaged in the thinking. And and can understand it anyway. Brian?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, you know, the communities being able to clearly, or the schools or the districts, the communities combined, articulating what we all have, and coming down to what would you collectively want to do if we threw that all together? What could that look like to you? Not, you know, this is what we're going to do, but what would you do? And then, you know, you have a community vision and engaging stakeholders in creating something that could perhaps then be presented, allows everybody to be included in that discussion. That's all. That's how I was trying to frame it.
Yep. Great. Okay, so this is where we start. Do you think that just going straight to the teachers, the teams that have been articulated is the way to go, or do you object to my having conversations with the superintendents in each district? And possibly, I don't know about board members at all, the school committee members. What are your perceptions about that? Wow.
Mary, I don't think there's nothing that would prevent that. I mean, of course, you could have conversations with the administration, and I'm envisioning that as you're getting information from the teachers about, you know, what might be possible for content and offerings, that out of that, you would have some time to, in that conversation, to find out what they see as hurdles or
right,
you know, pluses and minuses. And so that will just come naturally in your small meetings. You can make that part of your agenda. You know, we're here for two things. You know, one, to have a conversation about scheduling, what's possible, what are your ideas? Another might be, what do you see as areas that we would need to have more attention on that are concerns?
Right, thank you. I saw Deb first and then Mike.
Yeah, Mary, I think it's certainly meeting with the superintendents, because obviously they understand a bigger scope of what can occur. But I would like to see you focus more on the faculty and the staff and their thoughts. And after you get those, you might have another ending meeting with the superintendents to say, would any of this be absolutely impossible to, or whatever. But I think allowing more time with the staff and faculty and what their thoughts are.
Right, definitely, Deb. Thank you. Mike?
Well, yeah, I think that the idea of meeting with, I mean, Brian can speak up. He is a superintendent. To me, it sounds like a great place to start. What I'm hearing is that the grant sort of put together a rough idea of what the participation would be, but it really hasn't been fleshed out. I don't think we have a list. I mean, if you were tomorrow to say, okay, who do I set up meetings with? I don't think anybody has a list of who those people are. And it seems to me that the superintendents may be working with the principals at the different schools would be the place to start to say here, you know, I mean, Brian especially, he's been to our meetings and he's pretty familiar with what we're trying to do. You know, just get his take on you know who should be talking with and how do you go about setting up the meetings and go from there, because I think you do need some kind of prep before just hopping in, because there's nothing to hop into right now.
Thank you. So it does seem to me that, yeah, O'Brien, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just a quick comment that it might make sense, rather than to meet first with the superintendents, to get us involved in an email thread and consider meeting with the central office educational staff, with the superintendents from both districts and the secondary principals together in one room, so that, you know, it expedites your consult with people and gathering information. but you're obviously the expert and the consultant. I worry about being in the pandemic that everybody is stretched for time, and perhaps having everybody in the same room and exploring, might placate some concerns about people saying this or people saying that from one district to another, because it's more exploratory than anything else. And again, having people share what they feel is best about their schools. I think, just might present a starting point rather than just meeting with the superintendents. You'll get a little bit more experience from both districts there, because there's between the pupil services directors of curriculum or teaching and learning, you might get a little bit more of a historical perspective there as well.
Okay, and you're saying to do it with the two districts together in one room?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, if we're going to collaborate on this, those are the people who probably have the most flexibility in their schedule as opposed to teachers to get together in the same room. And maybe it can be 2 meetings where we each walk through each other's facilities while we talk. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Okay, this is getting a little bit more complicated.
Brian, how many people do you envision in a meeting like that? What do you think you're talking for numbers?
I would just estimate probably a total of 10.
Okay.
Two superintendents, 2 pupil services. But Mary, I'll follow your lead. You're being directed by the group, and I'm just thinking out loud.
And thank you. And I appreciate that. Bill, was that your hand I saw up?
Yeah, you did. I agree with Brian. When I set up the meetings with the faculties, I made the decision to go to the superintendent and the principal of each building, just to make sure that I wasn't undercutting anybody or bypassing anybody in wanting to talk to the faculty. And as well, I set up the meeting for a faculty meeting that was regularly held, not any kind of professional development. But aside from that, another question that comes up is, are we going to provide the stipend? Are the stipends for the faculty as opposed to administrators? The issue has certainly been broached that faculty have not received the same salary increases as administrators in the past year. And some people we all know that money is at the forefront of a lot of the complaints about having to work during the pandemic. So anyway, it relates sort of to that, but I wasn't expecting to have to pay a stipend especially to the upper level of administration. That may be a wrong conception. I don't want to take anybody's dinner away from them, but.
No, absolutely not. The stipends really should be for teachers and instructional staff. The administrators won't necessarily be compelled to go to the meeting, but we'll try to gather everybody's best interest and do it at a mutually convenient time.
And that was the
Yeah, and I
understanding
believe we
when
had
wrote the
changed it.
grant. We were not paying stipends to administrators.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it was possibly the curriculum coordinators, Joanne. Did we left that door open for them? I thought, but
Right,
clearly
the
after that,
curriculum
it was all the staff.
coordinators that at the high school and middle school that are stipended positions, not the district curriculum coordinator, but the curriculum coordinators that are like department heads at the schools.
So they're teachers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And what I learned at Pioneer recently is actually they don't have department heads. So Mary, you'll have to figure out, or someone will have to tell you, who will be the contact in those content areas. Karen maybe can help.
They do have lead teachers.
Yeah.
So
Okay, good.
that might combine a couple of different academic disciplines. I think there have been 4 lead teachers in recent years. Okay.
Thank you. Deb?
You know, if you go on their website and research the staff listing, you'll see that clearly.
Mary, if we're talking about getting the faculty of, the English teachers from both schools together, I think Brian's idea actually would probably be very helpful. And someone else said, if you had 2 meetings, you meet at Turner's once, you meet at Pioneer once, it really would, I don't know if Brian's ever walked around Pioneer. I don't know if their superintendent has ever walked around Turner's. And do they really have a clear picture of what the opportunities are? So I think Brian has a very valid point. If we're going to get the staff and faculty together, then why not the administrators also?
Thank you. Great. Yeah.
Mary, let me just give you a time check here for a minute, just so that we're all aware. So it's approaching 8:30. These are good conversations, and we obviously have to schedule another meeting. The working if we just look at a timeline for a minute, if we could deviate and focus on what your thoughts are around the timeline for these working groups to be putting together, meeting their obligations so that it all comes together at the right time and order. Thoughts?
You're asking me, Alan, Mary? I think that
Yeah.
the first focus has to be on collecting the thinking, because I don't know what we communicate if we don't have that in hand. Would others agree with that? I mean, I don't know what would be new to be putting out unless you've had the opportunity to have the conversation. So I think I would forward load the education groups work and then sort of backload the PR work. That would be my inclination. But I'm open to thinking. I'm sorry, that was.
That's fine, but I was thinking more like the timeline for, we can do the questions and answers and get that information, get that started, and try to have, or maybe the end time on that is the grant. The presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, there was a lot of missing information, and that going back and looking at those reports and what needs to be out there. We talked about educating the staff. That could be an ongoing project. And then from what we learn, we'll be able to tweak it or add, new slides and so forth. Engage in the community. I get that. That will have to probably hold off a little bit. But while this is going on, there certainly could be, communication in some form that lets people know what we are doing. We're meeting with the staff and so on. So that there are bits and pieces or baby steps in terms of getting information out. But even if it's informing them what we're doing or planning on doing, I don't think we should hold off on these working groups getting started. And that's what I was thinking about logistics in terms of a calendar. But I don't have all the answers. I may not have any of them. I'm just thinking from the 3,000-foot view, how we want to make sure that we're not all rushing at the end of June, that we've got maybe a number of steps done to start pulling things together. That's all.
I feel like you probably have collectively have a better sense of what you're ready to work on immediately and what you would want to postpone until you have more information. And I would love to hear that thinking from each of the committees so that we can sort of map out the plan of work. Is that fair?
Perfect. Yeah, that's fair, because it's not me, it's the leads of the working group, what they're thinking, in terms of activities and timeline, and what they think they might be able to accomplish. I was just trying to put a structure some structure around this, and then just remind us that if there are things that we need to do in that area. So that's a good idea, having each person have a lead in what their thinking is, so you have an idea of
Yep.
timeline and what activities they're thinking about.
Thanks, Helen. Deb?
So Mary, you can just, rather than take time with the whole group, email me and say, Deb, what are your thoughts on how your group is going to, and what do you need? And I can tell you what my thoughts are and so forth.
Hey.
And the only suggestion that one of the faculties had was that there just wasn't enough time the last time, that the meetings were put together, there wasn't enough lead time, there wasn't whatever. So that's my only thought for me, and we can talk about that privately.
Sounds great. Thank you. Anything else? We are right at the 8:29 moment, so
So do you want to do that? Do you want to do that, Mary, with each group?
yes, I will do that.
Mary, do you want to do that with each group then? You have, so Deb, you could have a conversation with her and you could set up a meeting. We had Bill, right? Did you,
Yes.
were you
I
on when we nailed down the groups?
Deb,
Okay.
Mike, Greg,
Okay, perfect.
I think I wrote them all down when you were talking earlier.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I will do that. Sounds great.
That sounds good to me, Alan. I'd just like to say that I'm not seeing June 30th as being necessarily a hard deadline for the public presentation. Just because I agree with Mary that we need to get a lot of information together. Some of it already exists, but we haven't collected it. Some of it has yet to exist because it will come out of the sessions that she's going to have with the faculty. And I think it will depend a lot on the timing of that. I'd rather do a good job than figure that we've got to hit some sort of a deadline. So in that sense, my sense of a timeline very generally is we'll see how fast we can get it all done. But some of it is beyond my control. It's waiting for other people to get things done.
And yet sometimes having deadlines because you have a meeting is helpful, right? So
Yes, yes.
helps move things forward. Okay. Great.
Okay.
Alan, you all set?
Thank you.
Are the members all set? So I guess we're saying that we're going to, you're going to
Sure.
reach out, maybe participate in their working group as to nail some of this down, and then and what the timeline might look like. I think, Mike, your point is well taken, and that maybe it takes this whole time to get a presentation together, but we may not get anything out until, even though it's done, until the teachers come back and the community is back from summer break and so forth. Because we'll lose a lot of folks during summer break as people go on vacation. We need to schedule a next meeting for the for us.
You
I
have,
think, when do you,
it's 6:30.
When was that?
Next Wednesday at 6:30 is what we talked about last week.
Oh, boy.
yes, we do, right. I do have that.
We
Does
set
everybody
up
else?
3 meetings in a row.
We did, but wasn't that dependent on whether we thought there'd be something useful to discuss next week?
Yes. I agree.
So
Yeah.
do we think there is, or there will be? And as I remember, that was going to be a Mary question, if she thought there would be a point in meeting next week.
I think putting it out a little bit would be good. Give me a little time to make some, get going.
The next one, Alan, had
people-
was Tuesday, the 19th at 6:30.
Yeah,
That's a,
Is that too soon?
um,
That's school
that's a
vacation.
That's a Tuesday. Did you want to
Yep.
stick with Wednesdays?
No, I don't.
Well,
Not
Tuesday,
if people can make Tuesday.
I cannot. I have a Warwick transition meeting that's going to last 3 or 4 hours.
Oh.
Starting at 4 o'clock. So no, I can't make it on the 19th.
Did the 20th not work
So,
for?
I cannot
I can-
hear. I don't,
No one's
Nobody's-
talking.
Anything.
Nobody's.
How about 2 weeks
Oh.
from today, Thursday?
Thursday, the 21st?
Yes.
We have a school committee
It's
meeting.
school vacation, but I don't know if that matters.
We
I've
have
got
a school committee meeting that night.
Got a FERCog meeting that night.
I have a garden club meeting.
Is
that
there a
night.
reason we did not talk
What-
about Wednesday?
can we do the 20th?
I can.
I can.
I can from North Carolina. We all, is that okay?
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
might have to join late.
Yeah, it's all right with me.
Okay,
If at all.
all right. So let's try 6:30, planning board. Mary, you and I will talk about what the agenda should look like. You could help to prepare that so that we're consistent with your conversations with the different working groups and
Good.
how we're moving forward. And you're reaching out to the two superintendents to see who the lead, you and I can talk offline about the others.
Sounds good.
hey,
Any other business people want to come up with?
Mm-mm.
nope.
All right, a motion?
I'll move,
Move
we
to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Second,
That was everybody.
thank you, Mary.
All right.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian and Joanne.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.